What's up, everyone? Welcome to Hidden Gems, where we share quick tips, tricks, and things you should know about developing in the Ruby on Rails framework. Today, we are going to be talking about the infamous N+1 query problem. Before we get started, I do want to let you know this video will assume a basic knowledge of Rails and Active Record. If you need to get caught up, I'll include some links in the description below to some helpful resources so that you can do that. And with that, let's get started. So, what is the N+1 problem? The N+1 problem is common when working with ORMs like Active Record, and it has to do with the number of queries we're making to the database. The N+1 problem occurs when we make a query for a group of objects. That would be our +1. And then for each of those objects, we access some information about a related object that's stored in a different table of the database. This will result in n additional queries, where n is the number of objects we got from our original query, forming our N+1. If you're still a little confused, don't worry, this is a lot easier to demonstrate with an example. So let's take a look at some code. Scooch myself down into the corner here. All right, so I've created a new Rails project and used a scaffold to just spin up a couple of very quick, simple models for this demonstration. So we have an author model that consists of just a first name and a last name. And then we have a book model that consists of a title and a reference to its author via foreign key. So I will also mention I'll be using the Rack Mini Profiler gem so we can take a look at the performance of our page loads and also see what queries are being called for each page load here. So if we take a look at our books controller, we see we are calling books.all and for the index action. So we're getting all the books from the database. And then in the index, we're looping through each of these books and then rendering a partial book for each one. And so in that partial, we're showing the book's title, but then we're also doing this book.author, where we're getting the first name of the author of the book. And that's where our N+1 is going to come into play here. So to kind of see this in action, let's actually go ahead and create some objects. So I've got my Rails console open here, and let's say 1,000 objects. Why not? And so we will create a new author, and we'll say his first name is author plus whatever index we're on in our loop. And we'll say the last name is just last. Why not? And so then using that author, we'll also create a book. Its title will be book. And then we'll stick on whatever the index of the loop we're in is. That way each book title will be unique. And then here we will give it the author that we just created. And so we should, when we run this, we should now have 1,000 unique books that each is linked to a unique author. Awesome. So now that we actually have some objects to work with, let's go ahead and run our server. All right, here we go. So we should be up and running now. Very good. And so let's go ahead and hit that books index action. Now, if you take a look at the top left here, this is the Rack Mini Profiler gem that I was mentioning. So it looks like it took us, about 9,200 milliseconds to load our index here. And let's see if we can find our relevant queries. Um, all right, so taking a look, we can see the SQL statement for our books.all call. So just as a reminder, that would correspond uh, with this active record call in our controller. But then if we go down a little bit, we start to see all of these SQL statements querying the authors table. We have one for every single book. So this is coming from our little book partial here where we're doing book.author. So for each book that we loop through and we render this partial for, we're generating another query to the database. And each of these, 0.3 milliseconds, 0.2 milliseconds, you can see how the larger and larger your table grows, the more this is going to add up performance-wise. So let's take a look at one possible solution. So in this situation, we can use the includes method. So let's take a quick look at the Ruby docs for that. So it specifies relationships to be included in the result set of an active record call. So in their example, they are taking a look at users, and then for each user, they're accessing the associated address and getting the city. So let's see. So this allows you to access the address attribute of the user without firing an additional query. So that is the key here. So let's go ahead and try to add this to our controller. All right, so instead of books.all, we're going to do books.includes author. And all right, so now let's go back to our books index, and we can get rid of this, and let's reload the page here and see how we did. All right, so you remember last time we had about 9,200 milliseconds as our load time, so we've cut about 4 seconds off of that, so not bad. And so now let's go and take a look at our SQL calls and see what is different. So we still have our call to the books table where we're getting all books from the table. But if we go down, now instead of seeing 1,000 different individual queries, we see just this one query where Active Record has saw the includes method and has gone ahead and preloaded all of the authors that it's going to need from the author table related to the books that we queried. So now instead of 1,001 queries, we have just 2, which I would say is a pretty darn big improvement. So this is a pretty simple example, but this is something that can happen in more complex and unexpected ways, especially when you're dealing with multiple different relationships, a bigger, more complex application, and you're maybe passing different scopes around, doing all types of different things. So always be conscientious of when you're doing an active record query or just when you're querying the database in general. If there's any information you're going to need up front, in a lot of cases, you would do well to go ahead and load that information from the get-go, rather than running into this N+1 problem and generating way more queries than you need. All right, y'all, I hope this video has helped outline the importance of being conscientious about how and when you make calls to the database, and that you're not going to be adding any N+1s to your Rails projects moving forward. I know you're not. I'll include a GitHub link with the code from this video in the video description. Do you have any N+1 horror stories? Did I miss anything important in the video? Do you have any suggestions for a future video? Be sure to let me know down in the comments. And as always, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, be sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button to get notified about any future videos. See you next time.